Good afternoon, Bruins. My name is Allison Beckman, and I serve as the Associate Director for Bruin Traditions here at UCLA Alumni Affairs. Thank you so much for joining us today for Alumni Day Online. It's great to have you all with us. This half hour, we're going to be exploring making sustainability connections through an interactive Q&A session with Nurit Katz. Nurit Katz graduated from UCLA with a dual Master's of Public Policy and MBA degree in 2008. She is UCLA's first Chief Sustainability Officer and also serves as the Executive Officer for UCLA Facilities Management. Additionally, Nurit is an instructor for UCLA Extension's Global Sustainability Certificate Program. That is a mouthful. In her free time, you can find her photographing nature and rescuing animals in need. Nurit, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thanks. It's great to be here and really excited about Virtual Alumni Day.
We're so excited to have you. So let's start with a very basic. How would you define sustainability?
Well, the most common or most sort of official definition of sustainability is meeting the needs of the present generation without compromising the future generation's ability to meet their needs. So it's basically, how do we as humans live on this planet in a way that doesn't mess things up for our kids and our grandkids?
It's a very positive, exciting view on life. I think that's good. Good way. How did you find your way into the world of sustainability?
Well, I was interested in these issues from a really young age. And it was then really during college that I started to see how it all intersects and broaden from sort of a more traditional environmental view to understanding the 3 E's of sustainability, which are ecology, economy, and equity. So understanding how economy and environment intersect and the intersection between environment and equity, and sort of starting to develop a more complex systems approach.
That's good. And then how did you find your way specifically to your current role?
Well, my background was in environmental education, actually. So I used to love working with kids. I worked for LA County Parks and Rec, taking kids hiking and teaching them about the natural world and related topics. And then eventually I started seeing that I might be able to have a bigger impact outside being an individual teacher, also working at a management or policy role. So I came here to UCLA for grad school. I did a dual program. It was the MBA and the Master's in Public Policy at Luskin and Anderson. And I hadn't planned to stay in higher education. I was planning to either start my own organization or maybe do some consulting, but I kind of fell in love with UCLA while I was here, and this role was open right as I was graduating, and it was just kind of a perfect fit.
So when we talked before, you had mentioned that your story with UCLA began way before your MBA here. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, sure. You mean the family history? Yeah, my grandparents actually met here at UCLA. So they were students here in the 40s when it was basically just the quad. And, everyone who's done the UCLA tour knows how there used to be an arroyo and a bridge there. And so my grandma's chemistry TA was my grandpa's brother. And he said, hey, I've got this little brother for you that you have to meet. And he introduced them, and the rest is history. So I always say half jokingly that I owe my life to UCLA because of that. And before my grandpa passed away, they did a great story in UCLA magazine. It was part of a series called Bruins in Love. And so they interviewed my grandma and grandpa about that experience. And my grandpa was remembering Tom Crumplar's malt shop, which I was amazed he could remember from, so many years ago. And he also talked about necking under the bridge. So, I think the beginnings of my life were definitely rooted here at UCLA. So it was exciting to get to come back in graduate school.
Well, that's just adorable. So switching gears a little bit, what is the greatest challenge that you face on a day-to-day basis which affects your work?
Gosh, well, this work is interesting and not boring because it's all challenges. So it's basically a lot of different problems we're trying to solve, and they're complex problems. But I would say one of our greatest challenges on a day-to-day basis is actually communications. Mm-hmm. So UCLA is like a small city or even like a middle-sized city. It's 80,000 people on a daily basis. And so we have a lot of incredible programs in sustainability, 400-something courses. We have 30+ research centers, hundreds of faculty engaged in sustainability, and a lot of cool things we're doing with the physical campus. But a lot of people don't even know any of that exists. So getting the word out about what's going on and how people can get engaged is really a constant challenge. And so I love opportunities like this to connect with a new audience and hopefully reach some of our alums who might be excited to get engaged.
Perfect. We mentioned in your bio that you teach as an instructor for UCLA Extension. What do you enjoy most about that experience?
Oh boy. I really, really love teaching. That was my first passion. So it's really amazing to have an outlet for that. But what's incredible about this program, Extension in general attracts a really diverse set of students from different walks of life, different stages of life. You know, some people are pre-masters and then other people are retiring and looking for their kind of second or third or fourth or fifth career. So it's that diversity of student that I find especially exciting. And in particular in sustainability, we not only have that diversity in terms of stage of career, but we also have students from all over the world. So like 2 quarters ago, for example, I had a class where in one class, I had so many different countries and industries represented. I had an MBA from Mongolia, a dentist from India, a lawyer from France, a hospital scientist from Switzerland, an actress from Tunisia. And I mean, it went on. It was like having the United Nations and every industry in the classroom together. And so to get a group like that together to talk about these critical global challenges like climate change or poverty, it's just an incredible experience. And I really love it.
I think that's what makes UCLA especially so special, is just the convergence of all those different people and being able to be in that classroom setting.
Absolutely. And then getting to see those ripple impacts. So I just came from the Bay Area, just flew back. We were at the Global Climate Action Summit hosted by Governor Brown. And at one of the affiliate events there around our Sustainable LA Grand Challenge, we had a few of my former students, including one who's now the Chief Sustainability Officer for Bureau of Sanitation and Chief Resilience Officer for that organization. So it's really exciting to get to see what the students end up doing and all those ripple impacts of our programs here. And the same goes for our undergraduate alums and graduate alums.
Definitely. So you talked about it a little bit, but you work closely with Sustainable LA Grand Challenges, which the goal is to create 100% renewable energy, 100% local water, and enhanced ecosystem health by 2050. Can you talk a little bit about this mighty task you have in front of yourself?
Yeah, I'm impressed you've got all the goals. So this is a program, it's led by Associate Vice Chancellor Mark Gold and the director, Cassie Rouser. And it's really, truly a groundbreaking program. So this is a program that brings together over 100 faculty from all over UCLA, different disciplines, management, policy, planning, law. And the goal is to have them all work collaboratively towards this challenge of shifting LA County to 100% renewables and 100% locally sourced water, as you shared. And so it's exciting not only because of the way it will transform our region, but also just as a university, it's really groundbreaking to harness so many different disciplines together towards a specific goal like that. It's really not something that's been done before on this scale. So I really admire both Cassie and Mark's work in terms of it's kind of herding cats, you know, working with that many different faculty and getting everybody collaborating. And it's just a really exciting program. And it's one that really alumni can connect to throughout the region and get involved with. So that's a really neat program.
Amazing. And how do you measure kind of incremental success in that? Because 2050 is still a little bit a ways away. But what are you doing on the day-to-day basis to really understand and measure that?
Yeah, so in terms of the program itself, they developed a 5-year work plan, and they're giving out a number of different grants. And so all of that is tracked. So folks who are interested, it's grandchallenges.ucla/sustainable LA with a hyphen in between. And so they can, you know, check out some of those interim reports. But in terms of progress for the region, the Grand Challenges group also does a report card for LA County, where they actually look at different metrics like air quality or energy or water, and looks at the progress that way. We also work really closely, both my office and the Grand Challenges work really closely with the Mayor's Office of Sustainability. So LA City has a Sustainable LA plan that has had numerous progress reports and has very specific tracked metrics to look at progress in LA. And now UCLA, together with Borough Happold, are actually working on, in addition to, but obviously very linked to the Grand Challenge, are working on developing the very first sustainability plan for LA County. So that's really exciting, and we'll lay out some of those goals and metrics for the county as well.
Great. So we actually have our first question. So Eric asks, what is the role of UCLA and the University of California in policy around sustainability?
The role of UC and UCLA in broader statewide and national policy?
Correct, yes.
Okay, so yeah, we do a lot of advocacy efforts. As I mentioned, UCLA is part of this Global Climate Summit right now. Different entities at UCLA participate in different ways. The Emmett Institute for Climate Change and Environment at the law school has a pretty big impact on that side. The environmental leaders there like Ann Carlson, Kara Horwitz, Sean Hecht are really seen as experts in this space. So they're often quoted in the LA Times. They write works both in media and scholarly work that really has a big influence on policy. The Luskin School of Public Affairs, also strong connections with policy. So for example, LADWP, our municipal utility here, has what's called a feed-in tariff program, where businesses can work with DWP to have solar on their rooftop in a way that is usually break even or beneficial to that business, and also helps increase in-basin solar for the region. And so that program was actually designed by the Luskin Center for Innovation, which is a major center at the Luskin School. We have a lot of Luskins here, thanks to the generosity of Myra and Rennie Luskin. So the Luskin Center for Innovation works on all kinds of really exciting projects. And one of their projects was looking at how do we design this feed-in tariff policy for LA, and it was a massive, crazy model in Excel to figure out where to set that tariff and what the market impacts would be. And so it's that kind of work that has direct, immediate impact on policy. And then they also work at the intersection of policy and technology. So Luskin and engineering are collaborating right now on this CO2 concrete project, sustainable concrete, where they're actually sequestering CO2 into a concrete substance. And they are finalists in the Carbon X Prize. So just a lot of really neat, innovative work. And then, of course, we have our Office of Government and Community Relations that also, helps advocate at the local, state, and national level.
Great.
Yeah. I hope that answered the question.
Yes, of course. I mean, all these things that are blowing me away as well. So thank you for sharing that. We have a question from Nick, who asks, are we working with any companies outside of UCLA that help the campus further environmentally friendly efforts? I don't know if that's further environmental friendly efforts. What do you look for in these partnerships?
Yeah, absolutely. So, obviously as a large, operation, we work with a lot of vendors. So certainly we're always looking to pilot technologies or implement technologies and services at UCLA. We look for partners in that side of things who offer, great products and services, and also who share our values in terms of their own operations. But we partner with companies in ways that go beyond just using their products and services. The Institute of Environment and Sustainability, which is a major hub of sustainability at UCLA and is the home for our environmental science major and also our new PhD in environment and sustainability. The IOES, as the acronym, they have a corporate partners program where companies can actually partner with the university in a deeper way. They offer research that is sort of, based on what the company's needs and questions are. So they talk to these corporate partners and find out what questions they're struggling with. And then university students and faculty look into these issues and then present them in interesting forums to the companies. And so it's a really great program that has a lot of synergy with local companies. And anyone who's interested, I'm sustainability@ucla.edu. I'd be happy to connect you with the Corporate Partners Program or any of the programs I mentioned here. So we love getting folks engaged.
Great. A question from Angela. Does UCLA being a leader in this area of sustainability play a role in student recruitment?
I believe it does. So I do a lot of tours and talks as part of Bruin Day or, freshman activities like that. And I've definitely had students share that the tour and what we're doing in sustainability was part of their decision coming here. But also nationally, surveys show that this is something students care about. They care how green or how responsible the university is in addressing these issues. I know there was a survey a while back from Princeton Review, and it was something like 76%, but that's not from this year. So I don't know what the current percentage is, but definitely a lot of prospective students share that that's something they care about. And that's reflected in the workforce too. So companies report that, especially younger, employees that are looking at working for a company, this is something they care about. This is something they look to. They want to know the sustainability performance of the company that they're going to work for. And so for a lot of companies, that ends up being part of the motivation for sustainability performance. There's a lot of drivers right now, changing regulations and risks around climate change and reputation, but definitely the recruitment side is certainly a piece of the puzzle.
That's great. I think that's something we had talked about as well was your role in all of this really stemmed a lot from when you were a student looking for these kind of programs when you were applying to school. So what was the landscape like when you were applying for your undergrad and then graduate degrees? And how did that kind of decide on your role and where you went from there?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I was interested in these issues, pretty early on in life. And so I went to UCLA for a year as an undergrad and was interested in environmental studies back then. And our environmental science major hadn't started yet. So I ended up transferring to a different school. And part of it was I grew up here in LA and I wanted to really experience something outside LA. And I kind of knew I'd be back someday to UCLA. But it definitely, part of it was that we didn't have as formal an environmental program then. I think there was geography and environmental studies then, but I don't know that I was aware of it. And we didn't have a fully focused major at the time. So the landscape has evolved a lot. We now have the major and the PhD, and many of our graduate programs have focuses within them. So if you do public policy, you can focus on policy. We have a brand new environmental law specialization at the law school. Anderson, the business school, now has a social innovation focus and a whole impact at Anderson program. So it's changed dramatically since I originally started here at UCLA. And I think we're seeing that nationally. This field is just accelerating and changing so quickly. And there's so many great new opportunities. And, the job that I have now barely existed, when I first started. So it's really neat to see the field evolve and all of these new opportunities for people who are excited to tackle these big problems.
Well, thank you for being a part of the evolution of
absolutely,
and all this progress that's happening around us on campus. So what do you, as a Bruin, what is the impact that you want to leave on UCLA?
That is a good question. It's the same as my answer to the impact I hope to leave on life, which is that to make things better, to have a positive impact, to touch people's lives. Part of what I really love about working here at UCLA is truly the community and the people. There's so many brilliant, dedicated, creative, diverse, interesting people here. And I just hope that I'm in some way able to create, better opportunities for them to be who they want to be and create a more, beautiful, sustainable, healthy campus for folks to enjoy in the future.
Wonderful. What are ways in which current Bruins and alumni can play their part to help create a more sustainable world?
There's so many different ways in which people can have an impact, from the small daily choices we make. Some of them people are probably familiar with, bringing a reusable mug, the little choices, choosing to commute in a more sustainable or active way, biking or taking the bus, even if it's not every day. I mean, that's something I think a lot of people don't realize is it doesn't have to be all or nothing. It doesn't have to be go super vegan and be really religious about it. It could just be eat less steak. It can be make these choices every day, and they might be small, but they add up in the long term. So those small personal ways definitely can have an impact. But I think, what we see being part of UCLA is how much our impact multiplies when we work together and collaborate. And so for people who are really passionate about this, I encourage them to get engaged with local organizations or with us. There's so many opportunities to volunteer or participate. You can make changes in your workplace, advocate for, the whole office to do something differently. You can make calls to your senator or advocate for policies that support sustainability. So our impacts are certainly not limited to our consumer choices, although a lot of people sometimes like to start with that small daily practice. So I hope that is helpful.
Definitely. I mean, you can ease into it or go full, both feet into it, either way.
Yeah, absolutely.
A question from the live chat. Most jobs in sustainabilities are generally found in urban areas. Are there any opportunities in more rural areas that you know of?
Yeah, that's a really good question. There are a lot of sustainability jobs in urban areas, just like there's a lot of jobs generally in urban areas. And part of that is because there's so many problems to solve. That's where a lot of the air pollution but there are definitely jobs in more rural areas. Sustainability is such a broad field. So there can be more technical jobs like installing solar, for example. A lot of folks in rural areas have even less access to regular grid type services, and oftentimes sustainable technologies from, rainwater capture to solar really have even more need in rural areas. There can be sustainability in schools or organizations that are in rural areas. And then, of course, there's sustainable agriculture, which is a huge and growing field. So one of our alums that we're very proud of is Paul Grieve, and he was actually a Marine and then I believe a CPA and an Anderson student. And he decided that he wasn't happy with the choices that were out there for his family in terms of healthy food. So he moved out to Temecula and started chicken farming and has since won agriculture innovation prizes. His farm is called Primal Pastures, and they have Pasture Bird as their chicken company. But, unfortunately, many people are moving away from farming, and we have a kind of a big crisis facing us as a nation because so many farmers are older and there aren't enough young farmers. So if you really want to make a difference in a rural area, I say go for sustainable ag. There's so much opportunity there, and all kinds of new interesting agriculture technologies and practices. So I hope that's helpful. Yeah, I'm happy to chat more about any of these questions, one-on-one. If anyone watching wants to follow up with an email, I'd be happy to talk because it's hard to have a full conversation in this format. Yeah.
To really go fully into everything in one question.
Yeah.
So what is the thing that you're most passionate about right now in the world of sustainability?
Gosh, there's a lot. One of the things that excites me right now is resilience and that intersection. So resilience is generally defined as an organization's ability to respond to shocks and stressors. So it's kind of where like emergency management and sustainability intersect. It's a very new developing field. LA City has their first chief resilience officer. And so UCLA is trying to tackle these issues for our campus. I was part of the emergency response for our great flood of 2014 with the DWP water main break. And that really opened my eyes a lot to the need for emergency planning and especially planning for the unexpected. So a lot of the times you're busy focusing on an earthquake or a drought, and then it's a flood that hits you. So it's how do we create nimble organizations that can respond to these things? And so there's especially an intersection when it comes to climate. Right now our, friends on the East Coast are facing some serious hurricane action. We had Puerto Rico hit earlier this year. And so the wildfires in California, I mean, you name it, these climate impacts are now, and they're severe and they're serious. And so while we're busy working on mitigation and trying to keep it from getting worse, we have to deal with the reality that's happening now and make sure that our organizations are prepared to respond and to recover and be resilient. So I think that's a really interesting intersection. And both sustainability and resilience are really about systems and understanding connections, which is something I'm really passionate about. So
definitely. Well, as someone whose car was in the parking lot of the Great Flood, I really appreciate your resilience and dealing with those emergency situations.
Oh, absolutely.
So we have a question from the live chat. Nick asks, UCLA has big goals for sustainable water usage, energy, waste management, and more by 2020. How on track is the university to hitting these goals?
That is a good question. Some of our goals are 2020 and then some are 2025, and that's not so far away anymore. As an organization, you do these big, throw a goal out there and it seems really far away. When I started here, 2020 was like somewhere far in the future, and it's around the corner now. So I would say we're on track, but definitely not coasting. We have big challenges ahead of us in the next couple of years to achieve these goals. The closest wolf to the sled, as one colleague puts it, is our zero waste goal by 2020. And that's really one in particular that we can't do on our own in terms of university managers. You know, this is one that takes everybody participating, everybody sorting, everybody putting things in the right bin, choosing to go zero waste with their events. And it's how do we shift from these sort of voluntary efforts to really making like sustainable business as usual in a rapid way. We've got a great team working on it. So I'm feeling good, but it's definitely not easy. And similarly with water and climate, these are not easy challenges to solve, and we still have a really long way to go. We continue to grow in population and square footage and research intensity. So we do all these efficiency efforts and we're growing at the same time, and it's really hard to move the needle, but we're committed and working on it really hard, I guess is the most honest answer. Yeah.
I've been working here for 5 years now, and in that time, I've seen the change in the materials being used at UCLA and the various garbages that have been coming up in different, is this compostable, is this recyclable, and really it changes the way you think on a day-to-day basis. So you notice those little
That's great to hear.
Yeah, you notice them over time. So it's not, Rome wasn't built in a day. So we're going to try to keep it.
Well, interestingly, one of the goals of ours that people do know the best is the zero waste goal because it's written on the trash cans and people see it every day. So, oftentimes communication, you might think about flashy videos or web, or different, media, but sometimes it's little subtle signage and things that are touch points for people every day. So that whole field of sustainability communications is really interesting. And we have researchers working on behavior change questions. Magali Delmas at UCLA Anderson has done some, and the Institute of Environment and Sustainability has done really interesting work. We look at our physical campus as kind of a living laboratory for sustainability, so a testing ground for technology and ideas. So she did a project with some of our students in housing, giving them real-time energy data and then different messaging to see what would make them reduce their energy usage the most. And I think the researchers thought it might be a more economic message about the energy savings. And what was surprising was they found that particularly in graduate and family housing, that it was a message of health about childhood asthma and the relationship with energy that actually impacted people more. So she just did a great new book called Green Bundle with David Colgan, who's the head of communications for IOES. And it looks at how companies can be more successful with their sustainable products by understanding those co-benefits, by looking at health and sustainability or these kind of intersections. So it's fascinating work. And then we also have, IOES has a brand new center called the Laboratory for Environmental Narrative Strategies with a lot of great faculty engaged, John Christensen and Ursula Heisey and Allison Carruth. And they're at that intersection of art, media, environment, looking at storytelling. They did a great collaboration with Vox, actually, called Climate Lab, which you can Google. That's a series of simple viral videos about different climate change related topics from waste to food and really cool stuff. So I think some of the most exciting innovation, people think about physical technology, but sometimes it's our storytelling that's as much an important piece of the puzzle.
Definitely. I think it's so wonderful how you're talking about really getting out of your silos and being across campus, being across industry, that kind of cross-platform experience that's only going to further us in this area.
Absolutely.
So I have a very serious question for you. How many animals have you rescued? And tell us a fun story about one.
Sure. So it's funny. So I used to work for LA County Parks and Recreation. And so I had a little bit of wildlife care experience from that many years ago. And then I like to take pictures. I take a lot of photos. And so people see that I do a lot of wildlife photos and they think of me when they think of wildlife. So I've gotten a number of calls when people have baby birds or other issues. We had some great horned owls on campus, actually. And one of the baby owls was in a very public walkway. And so a colleague from that building called me, Marisa Lemarand, and we were able to bring this postdoc who was a bird expert and relocate the owlet to where the parent could watch and feed him, and successfully, flew. And then most recently, you got to see, we actually had a baby wild parrot that was found by one of our faculty members. And so I took care of him for a bit until we could get him to a wild parrot rescue down in San Diego. He was super, super cute. I'm happy to share photos, many of them, with anyone who's interested. So yeah, if you do stumble on wildlife, you know, a lot of our faculty are working on this question of the intersection of cities and biodiversity. So a lot of really interesting work on urban wildlife right now. And so it's going to happen. You may end up finding a baby bird. Oftentimes they're fledglings that are supposed to be out of the nest on their own. And the advice is really leave them where they are or put them back in the nest. But sometimes you have an injured animal or one that's too young to be out. And then there are licensed wildlife rehabbers in LA that you can contact and get them to. So there's probably more of an answer than you wanted, but it's really amazing just how much wildlife we have, even here in a dense urban campus like UCLA. So we had a student project. We have this amazing program called Sustainability Action Research that's through the IOES. And it's undergraduate students that form teams and then work with staff or faculty on campus to do applied research on campus. So they've done everything from auditing faucets to mapping trees on campus, looking at food waste in the residence halls. And one of their projects was biodiversity focused, and they did bird count over this 2-quarter long class. And these aren't even, you know, experts. These are students who are learning, and they still found over 39 species of birds. So it's really pretty amazing what exists, and lots to learn about that too. We have a page on biodiversity on our website as well. So that was probably a lot more than you wanted about animals, but you could tell I love that stuff. So
never too much. Unfortunately, that does wrap up our time, although I wish we could talk a bit more. But thank you, Nurit, so much for your valuable insights on all things sustainability.
Absolutely. This was so fun. And follow up anyone who's interested, sustainability@ucla.edu for email and sustain.ucla.edu for way more info than you'd ever want. So thank you so much, Allison. This was a pleasure.
Of course.
Cheers.
So to everyone watching, thank you for participating in the discussion. If you missed a portion of the conversation or want to share it with others, you can find the recording on our UCLA Alumni YouTube channel. Thank you to our Blue, Gold, and Life members for making conversations and events like this possible. Enjoy the rest of Alumni Day online, and go Bruins.